We marked my wife's surprise birthday party, and I was thrilled because I had managed to plan it successfully. My wife had never had a surprise party before because she always stumbled upon the plans accidentally. The last time her parents attempted to throw her one was when she was 16 years old. Now that she was turning 27, and I was 25, I was determined to make it happen without any hiccups. While my wife was at work, I stayed at home with our 4-year-old son and set out to run errands for the birthday party supplies. On my way, I drove through her workplace parking lot to locate her car. My idea was to leave a rose and a romantic message on my wife's car, with instructions to meet me at a specific location and time the following day. I wanted to surprise her with an impromptu date. After work, I expected her to come home and ask me about the note. However, my plan took an unexpected turn. As I drove through the parking lot, I searched for her car and eventually found it tucked away in a corner at the back of the building. To my surprise, I noticed movement inside the car. It was strange, to say the least. I decided to park my car nearby and maneuver it as close as possible to hers. Using my phone's camera, I zoomed in to investigate the situation further. As I zoomed in with my phone's camera, I was shocked to see my wife in the car with another man, both of them topless and engaging in sexual activity. It was a scene that I couldn't believe was happening right before my eyes in the parking lot of her workplace. I scanned the area for any security cameras and realized that they were all just out of range from my wife's car, indicating that she had deliberately chosen that spot to carry out her affair. My mind raced with questions. How many times had she done this? Was this an ongoing affair? Despite feeling like I was losing my mind, I knew I had to remain calm and composed, as our young son was with me in the back seat of the car. So I gathered myself, put on a brave face, and headed home. Back at home, I knew I had to come up with a plan. So I pulled out my phone and drafted a text message to our guest list for the surprise party. Interestingly, my wife's coworkers were not included on the list, indicating that she preferred to keep her work life and personal life separate. In the text, I explained that I had just found out that my wife was having an affair. Despite this shocking discovery, the party would still go ahead as planned. However, instead of shouting surprise, we would yell something else to avoid any awkwardness. My friends and family were very understanding and sympathetic towards me when I explained the situation to them. They agreed to follow my lead and do something different from the activities I had originally planned for the surprise party. Even my mother-in-law reached out to me to apologize on behalf of her daughter and expressed her regret that I had to go through this painful experience. I was overcome with emotion and broke down crying during our phone call. Later that day, when my wife returned home from work, I pretended as if everything was normal between us. It was a difficult act to maintain, but I knew that the following day would be crucial to the future of our relationship. After much consideration, I decided to file for divorce and sought the assistance of a lawyer. I picked up the necessary paperwork and made the necessary arrangements with the venue to use their video projector for the surprise party. I returned to my wife's workplace and left the note on her car, opting not to include a rose as I felt that she did not deserve one. Upon returning home, I waited for my wife's response to the note. Despite feeling anxious and upset, I knew that the end of my marriage did not signify the end of the world, especially if my wife had indeed been cheating on me as the evidence suggested. When my wife confirmed receipt of the note via text, I took our son to my mother's house and hugged him tightly. The most difficult aspect of getting a divorce was the effect it would have on my spouse. As I arrived at the venue, guests were already there and expressing their apologies. They had promised to do everything in their power to support me through this difficult time. We worked hard to make sure everything was set up for a great show. When my wife entered the room, the lights suddenly went out and we all held our breath. Then, as soon as she appeared, the lights came on and everyone shouted, "Hey, cheater." I let the room fall into an uncomfortable silence while my wife tried to process the fact that she had just been called a cheater by everyone in the room. Her expression turned to one of offense, fear, and confusion. I pressed the play button on the projector, revealing footage of her car shaking with glimpses of her topless body. Her mouth fell open, and she covered it with her hands. Looking around the room, she noticed that her friends and family were all staring at her disapprovingly. Guests began to leave, and I took it as my cue to depart as well, leaving my wife behind. I had taken her house key earlier that morning, so I was able to get home 40 minutes before she did. All of her belongings were waiting for her on the front porch. Upon arriving home, she was once again taken aback and began to cry. I addressed her from the second-story window, informing her that she needed to gather her belongings and vacate the premises since she was no longer my spouse. While crying, she flipped me off and made a phone call. 10 minutes later, it appeared that the man she had been unfaithful with had arrived to assist her in moving her belongings to his residence. Perhaps I knew the identity of her boss as I proceeded to email him the video evidence I had captured. The following morning, I received a response. By utilizing the security cameras, he was able to determine the identities of those who had accompanied my wife to and from the car, resulting in both of them being terminated from their employment without delay. In due course, my wife contacted me and proceeded to hurl insults and expletives my way, but I remained unfazed. I was aware that she would eventually comprehend the severity of her mistakes, and throughout the divorce proceedings and afterwards, she implored me to desist from making further changes. Our lives were forever altered by the actions of my now ex-wife. Eventually, I ceased communication with her because she knew the magnitude of the harm she had caused us. It has been some time since I last heard from her. My top priority will always be my son, and I hold on to the hope that I will eventually meet a wonderful partner who can serve as both a companion to me and a positive maternal influence for my child. It is truly a terrible experience to endure, and I was left in shock when I surprised my wife at her workplace only to discover a distressing secret. She was entirely self-centered when she chose to betray our marriage. As humans, we are faced with temptation on a near-daily basis. The most astute among us possess the ability to withstand temptation consistently and remain devoted to the individuals who hold the most significance in our lives. It is not particularly challenging to ponder the repercussions of one's actions before arriving at a conclusion, and to never assume that a secret can remain concealed indefinitely. I hold on to the hope that you will eventually encounter a woman who values sincerity and selflessness in a relationship. You demonstrated remarkable wisdom and restraint in a situation that would have sent most individuals into a panic. I wish you all the best as you navigate the path ahead. Now let us delve into today's second story. In the second story, my wife typically did not go out for lunch with her friends. While I would have supported her if she had wanted to, she tended to be a bit socially awkward, so the majority of her friendships existed online. There was one individual who we both knew well named Leah, and she served as my wife's best friend. They tried to see each other as often as possible, but Lee lived 45 minutes away. Despite our open phone and computer policy, my wife was such a kind and honest person that I never felt the urge to check either of her devices. Although she frequently used them, she remained engaged with me and conveyed that devoting her attention to our relationship was a top priority. Things began to shift when she began spending more time in the bathroom, occasionally locking the door and becoming annoyed if I interrupted her while she was engrossed in one of her electronic devices. My suspicions grew when she requested permission to go out to lunch with a new female friend. Although she showed me a few messages between them, I remained doubtful about their true identity, despite the name being programmed as a girl's name. I found myself questioning how my wife could be certain about the identity of this new friend. I requested that she call the friend so I could speak to her, but she claimed that she couldn't as the friend was at work. She reassured me that they had spoken on the phone multiple times while I was away at work, but this only heightened my unease. As the day for their lunch approached, my wife became increasingly insistent on going and demanded that I trust her. After she left in her old car, I decided to follow her using the family location app, but she turned off the app just 13 minutes into her drive, which made me feel disheartened since it seemed like she didn't want me to know where she was going. I drove up and down the street where she turned it off, and despite it being full of restaurants and shops, I couldn't find her. I was about to give up because I began to feel like she could be watching me, but then I spotted her car parked in the lot of an Applebee's restaurant. I parked at a distance, and to remain incognito, I wore a hat, sunglasses, and scarf as I entered the restaurant. As soon as I arrived at the restaurant, I spotted my wife and Leah's live-in boyfriend, even before the hostess greeted me. It finally made sense why my wife didn't just say she was meeting Leah. I was in disbelief. My wife was seeing another man behind my back, and to make matters worse, it was her best friend's boyfriend. I couldn't comprehend why she felt the need to do this. My heart was racing, and unsure, my face turned red when the hostess attempted to seat me. I quickly declined and left the restaurant. I secretly moved closer to where they were sitting to snap a photo of them before returning to my car. I decided to wait, determined and eager to catch them in the act. I followed my wife and Leah's boyfriend to a house owned by someone named Lee, but my wife's car wasn't parked in the driveway, which only amplified my sickening suspicions. They went into the house, and I remained in my car, wondering what to do next. Despite my wife not earning a lot, her parents would send her generous amounts of money each month for various reasons. I made the decision that if I caught her cheating on me, I would inform her parents that they had high expectations for their daughter, which didn't include cheating or getting divorced. I made the impulsive decision to enter the house, and after finding a spare key, I unlocked the front door. The sound of the door opening was louder than I had anticipated, and I heard some movement in response, hoping that they believed it was Lee returning unexpectedly. I closed the door behind me and began walking cautiously towards the kitchen, trying to remain as quiet as possible. However, upon reaching the kitchen, I found it empty, but noticed a door leading to the basement. Despite my curiosity, I didn't dare open the door, and instead, I locked it from the outside, figuring that if they were down there, they would eventually be found. After thoroughly searching the rest of the house and failing to find them, it became apparent that my wife and Leah's boyfriend were stuck in the basement. I promptly left the house, ensuring that I had locked it and returned the spare key to its original spot before driving home. However, before I even arrived home, I received a call from Leah, who was in a state of shock and disbelief after discovering my wife and her boyfriend together in the basement. I acted clueless and could hear them all arguing and attempting to explain themselves in the background. I apologized to Leah, who then asked to speak to my wife. I informed her that my wife was out and asked her to call back later. Approximately an hour later, Leah called back, having presumably figured out what was going on. While crying, she confessed that she had taken her boyfriend's phone and gone through his messages. She discovered messages dating back 5 months between my wife and him, and it was evident that they were more than just friends. They had engaged in sexual activity as early as 4 months ago, as mentioned in their texts. They discussed their loneliness when Lee or I were at work and expressed a desire for more attention and the ability to have multiple partners. I was enraged, and I apologized to Leah for having to go through this with me. I requested her to share with me the screenshots of the evidence she had, as it was crucial to expose the infidelity. Upon receiving them, I forwarded them to my wife's parents and also posted them on Facebook, tagging my wife and her boyfriend. The online community responded with outrage and expressed their disapproval through hateful comments directed towards both of them. They were ostracized as a result. My wife had not returned home, even after 3 hours, presumably because she sensed that I had discovered her affair. When she finally called, she sounded remorseful and apologized, asking if there was anything she could do to make amends. However, I told her that there was nothing she could do to fix the situation. I had informed my wife's parents about the situation and had made up my mind to initiate divorce proceedings. When I informed my wife of my decision, she broke down in tears and began to wail. At that moment, her mother called her on the other line, and my wife hung up on me to take the call. When she called me back, she was crying uncontrollably, and it was challenging to comprehend what she was saying. Although it was satisfying to see her experience the emotional turmoil she had caused me, she attempted to convey that she was alone now. However, I questioned why that should be my concern. Subsequently, she employed various tactics to persuade me to reconsider taking her back, or at least show some mercy. She even went as far as offering me a pass to engage in sexual activity with another woman, but I refused, reminding her that I was now single and free to have sex with whomever I pleased. Despite her persistent attempts to contact me throughout the divorce proceedings, I chose to ignore her completely. Since I had concrete evidence of her infidelity, I retained possession of the house and did not have to pay her a penny in alimony, effectively concluding my story. After experiencing this ordeal, Leah and I have developed a strong bond and become good friends. I wanted to share my story in the hopes that it might assist others in coping with a similar sudden event. Wow, OP, I am truly sorry to hear about the betrayal and infidelity you experienced. Your wife's actions, particularly with her best friend's boyfriend, were reprehensible. Nonetheless, I commend you for your wise and calculated actions in uncovering the truth and exposing their deceitful behavior. It was also fortunate that you were able to obtain evidence of the affair to strengthen your case during the divorce proceedings. I have no doubt that you will continue to move forward and create a fulfilling life for yourself. It's essential to prioritize trust and communication in any relationship, coupled with selflessness and consideration for others, to build a strong and healthy bond. Thank you for sharing your story with us. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. Take care.